quality of the data, the transparency of the data, and as was mentioned earlier, some perception of greenwashing as well. So the more accurate, the more transparent the data can be, the better we can actually assess the social and the environmental impact. Because at the end of the day, coming from UNDP, from UN Development Organization, what we want is to attain sustainable development and really building on the role that the private sector can play to actually drive that transformation. And I think now there are proven data that companies that had strong ESG were more resilient during COVID. There's also data that shows that sustainability can be financially sustainable as well. It's not, they're not two separate parts, but they're becoming now two sides of the same coin, and they need to work hand by hand. So with our speaker today, this is what we would try to unpack, and we will deep dive into a series of questions to understand why is this so important at this point of time for their perspective. Then looking how are they doing it, and then how is this or is this not helping taking better informed decision on the impact of their companies on sustainable development. So our first speaker, Mr. Wong Chiek, which I was told I can call CC. Yes, a very warm welcome. He's the Senior Executive Vice President of Bursa Data Business. So his new function in the exchange that oversees data and AI to enable key strategies. So the scope includes executing Bursa's enterprise data transformation program, which covers data governance, infrastructure, and an analytics center of excellence. So the function is also accountable for the exchange commercial business in information service index and sustainable business. So we will hear, we usually often hear from the chief sustainability. Now it's good to hear from a data person itself what kind of experience they have and challenges that they face. So a warm welcome, Cici. Our second speaker is actually online, Mr. Poom. Can we see Mr. Poom? Yeah, here he is. A very warm welcome. So Mr. Poom is the Vice President of Global Partnership for Sustainability and Communication. So he's got more than 15 years of experience in corporate sustainability and environmental management. Poom has worked with a number of business organizations in Thailand and abroad, and he's also a member of Global Compact Thailand Environment and Human Rights Working Group. So warm welcome, Mr. Poom, and we look forward to your insights. Our next speaker is Mr. Amarjit, Chhina. Amarjit, who is championing MRCB's efforts in sustainability and sits on the United Nations Global Compact CFO Task Force for the Sustainability Development Goals, helping to drive a global sustainability agenda and develop strategies to accelerate the delivery of the SDGs within the private sector. Amarjit is also responsible within MRCB. Includes investor relations, corporate governance, human resources, IT, digitalization, automation, corporate communication, and corporate services. So looking forward to hear how across the organization data is being leveraged. Last but not least, our last speaker is from Unilever. So apologies, there was a change in the name. And we have Mr. Lucio Dinto Pramudio. Can we see him on the screen? Yes, a very warm welcome. Who is the Sustainability Business Data Monitor and Reporting Manager, Unilever Indonesia Foundation. So I think we'll bring very different perspective on how you are able to use data in your sustainability agenda. So let me first start with the question to Amarjit. Let's look at the why, no? From your company perspective. Why collecting ESG data has become so important now, and how is this message conveyed across the MRC group?
Thank you, Manon. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. Obviously, over the years, we publish a whole slew of ESG data. You know, we publish GRI compliant sustainability reports, and latterly over the last few years, integrated reports. We clearly have disclosure requirements that we have to adhere to from CC, Bursa, and other regulators, and obviously there are index providers as well, like FTSE for Good and MSCI, etc. But actually, to a large extent, I believe that's really by the way. You know, I think one thing which came home to me this morning from His Royal Highness the Sultan of Perak's address was ESG is about financial risk. You can't run away from the fact that that's the most important impact from non-compliance to ESG and not building resilience in your business by adopting ESG. And it's the same for us because, you know, if we don't go down this path and on this journey, we may not have a business. You know, we're a property development company and a large infrastructure development company. We have a strong balance sheet, but we require funding from the banks for working capital purposes. And there will come a day where that ability to get finance from the banks simply won't be there. You know, increasingly the banks are assessing our sustainability before they lend to us. Our institutional investors, our biggest shareholders in the Employees Provident Fund, they have a sustainability policy in place as well. So the writing's really on the wall. And you know, if you look at examples over the last few years with respect to the glove players and the plantation companies, you know, the impact from violations in human rights laws and others is financial. You know, they've been fined or they've been prevented from accessing certain markets. And that's going to impact your revenue, it's going to impact your bottom line. You know, on the horizon, you've got European carbon taxes coming up. I think they start next year. I think they're phased in over the next 4 years. So if you're an exporter, you know, if you're not gathering data on your embedded carbon and it's not aligned to EU requirements, you're going to have to pay the full levy, you know, and could have a profound impact on your market penetration, your market share, and it's going to affect your revenue. So, you know, this is a financial risk from our perspective. And I think all companies, not just listed companies, have to pay attention to this. Corporate boards in Malaysia, at least, I'm not sure about the rest of ASEAN, are fiduciaries. You know, they have a legal obligation to the owners of their businesses to protect them from financial liability and reputational loss. So it's something that has to be taken very seriously. And obviously, you know, the pressures that we're under as a corporate from banks and institutional investors and clients increasingly, you know, some of our big tenders now have a huge sustainability pre-qualification aspect to them as well. You know, we will have to lean on our supply chain and assess our suppliers. And in order to do that, we need to have access to data. You know, so it's imperative. It's no longer discretionary.
Thank you very much. I think you explained very well how this is not a choice anymore. It's the way to go, and the impact just from a financial, like there's a development. I would say from the UN, from a development perspective, there's no choice as well, because the impact on the environment and on society will be too heavy. But there's also a clear connection to the financial impact, and those who are not actually leveraging the ESG and being able to report systematically and help drive their decision will be basically out of business in a number of years' time. No? Can I invite Mr. Poom to bring the experience from Unilever?
I believe you mean Lucia on Unilever.
Sorry?
You mean Lucius from Unilever, right?
Yes, if you can explain, the question is, if you can explain why from your Unilever's perspective, ESG data has become so important, and how are you convening this message across, oh, sorry, I'm saying Unilever. I'm confused with the two names, sorry, from CP, no? Yeah. Poom, over to you, Poom.
Sorry, do you mean to invite Unilever or CP at this time?
CP, yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay.
Sorry, it's my mistake. It's my confusion. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sorry about that. So good morning from Bangkok, Thailand. Sorry about the poor lighting. I just ran from another session that I was moderating, actually on a very related topic, but it was focusing more on decarbonization. So CP Group, we are a Thai company, but we have operations around the world, in North and South America, in Europe, and of course in Asia, including Malaysia. And so we are a very diverse company with multiple different types of businesses under the umbrella of the group. But we're also not a single entity, right? We are a holding company, and many of our companies are public listed company, as Amarjit said, right? We have they have the duty to the stockholders, the stock markets, the regulatory bodies that are demanding all this data. So for those companies, they actually have very well established sustainability program, including the collection and disclosure of ESG data. But we also have many other companies within the group who are, less advanced, less well organized in terms of ESG framework, data collection and disclosure. So in 2015, we decided, we don't want to have this situation where some subsidiaries are well advanced in sustainability and the rest are not moving at the same pace. So we set up a group-wide sustainability platform to bring everyone up to speed. And that was the first time that we organized, the framework, the KPI, the reporting requirement, so that the bigger companies, the public companies can act as a coach to the smaller ones and bring it along. And then the importance of collecting, credible, accurate ESG data, I think everyone already knows. So I won't be preaching to the choir here. But again, the importance of having easy to understand for especially for the smaller companies with perhaps more limited resources to collect and manage the data. We at the holding company level, at the corporate level, have to understand what kind of business context all those different companies are in. And so when we compile all the data up to the group level, we have a better understanding of when we as a group, what are our impacts, our risk, our shortfall, so we can understand, as a group, where we're heading, how much impact we're generating. So I think that's it from me for now. I can come back to clarify further later.
Okay, thank you very much, and good to hear the experience around. I think you've set up a corporate level, group level governance structure to help you collecting the data across the organization. No? Now let me go to Sisi from Bursa, connecting to the first intervention on the financial viability and what investors, we know that investors are looking more and more and using ESG data to define the criteria for investment. We know that just 1% now of institutional investors worldwide are not looking at ESG criteria when making investment decisions. So what, in your opinion, is the fate of non-ESG adopter in the current economic climate?
Yeah, thanks, Manon, and a very good morning to everybody. So 1% of the institutional investors are not taking account into ESG consideration. So what are the risks? So in my view and in Bursa's view, they probably will get cut out from the ecosystem. So what do I mean by that? So let me kind of unpack that. So first, if we talk about data, the question is, what is the role of data in the midst of all the discussion around ESG? It's really about, with the economy transitioning to green, hopefully a greener, better future, there is a transitional cost and time involved. So what the data role is really to provide common language, enable and to facilitate that transition in a cheaper, faster, and probably more seamless way from the current economy to the new economy. And what does data do? So the first thing I would say is that it's about disclosure, in the sense that that's really the starting point. Because what disclosure means really is that the stakeholder in your ecosystem wants to hold you accountable. In a sense, you say what you mean, and then you do what you say. And in that sense, when a public company discloses their data, it's make it easier for the different stakeholders, institutional investors included, financial institutions as well, as corporates, their supply chain, and even their customers. And once the data is disclosed, it's public, there is a means for people to understand what you disclose and whether you say what you mean and you do what you say. Second is that with the availability of data is really be able to, for people to learn from each other. As in the smaller corporates, and look at a MRCB, for example, and say, okay, what can we learn from Amarjit and what the things to do? So a big applaud about putting all the data on your platform, and that allows smaller corporates as well as the supply chain, the SMEs in your supply chain to learn from it. And lastly, the third thing is really the availability of data, being transparent, allows people to measure your progress. So all the tools that being deployed in the market, for example, the index provider like MSCI, FTSE4Good, as well as even now more and more into the KYC processes of the bank in providing SLL, sustainable linked loans, and so on and so forth, is really for people to be able to say what is the progress you made between A and B. Further down, I would like to maybe talk a little bit about the ecosystem from a Bursa lens as a market promoter, as well as the regulator working with the Securities Commission, and as well as a commercial entity which kind of look at how do we cultivate the market in the sense that we will bring some outcomes, for example, investment into Malaysia to back to the institutional investors. So I think at the top you have the regulators, promoters, the industry think tanks, the corporates that are promoting events such as this one that UNGC has been successfully running for many times. At Bursa, we have an award that we have launched, an ESG award that we have launched with The Age on next Monday to provide a call to action to the corporates and celebrate those that have been doing well in an objective manner using the FTSE4Good methodology. So it's data-driven, it's quantifiable, and it's objective. Underneath the activities that provides the enablement for the ecosystem by the regulators, the promoters, and so on is really, the first thing I would say is the ESG disclosure. So Bursa announced after extensive public consultation, enhanced listing requirements that mandates corporates to provide, to submit or disclose their ESG data points, or common set of ESG data points starting 2024, which means a lot of work that we are doing right now is to work with our regulation team to put the system in place. I think this morning, Tuan Khoo said about ESG Genome, which is a corporate reporting platform. We have a few options that we are undertaking here, whereby we are looking at both in terms of the immediate ESG disclosure requirement for all the corporates, and also a means to bridge to a broader questions about how do we comply with, for example, standards such as TCFD, the GRI, and so on. So that's something that we are evaluating. One key feature in the disclosure piece is really the interconnectedness, and we talked about, I think, connectivity this morning with our trading partners. So the European partners, for example, the Asia as well as the Americas. So how do we create standards and be connected internationally from a data standard standpoint so that we talk to each other and people can understand each other? The other few blocks in terms of the ecosystem, I mean, number two, I think would be very importantly from an economy standpoint, and Malaysia being an export-driven economy, and I think 40% of our GDP or something like that comes from SME, is really how do we create standardized language where banks, the regulators, and it can look at the SMEs and be able to understand what are the disclosures. So along the spheres, what Bursa has done is to establish a collaboration with the first one with London Stock Exchange to look at internationally, how do we harmonize some of these standards. We also have a collaboration with the SSM, which is our company registration, to look at how do we drive some of these maybe low-hanging fruit down the private company chain. So aside from the financing part, I believe there's a component of how vibrant our fintech and digital ecosystem is in support of the activities that we are trying to promote in the market. So we constantly looking for partners that can come and work with us in terms of when we handhold PLCs, particularly the smaller ones, in terms of how to start to submit their ESG disclosure or qualify into the FTSE4Good index or qualify into certain index. That's something that we are trying to at least provide some standardization and quantifiable means to measure that progress. And the other last component probably that relates back to the question on institutional investors is really the carbon market, whereby we are launching our carbon market December this year. That, if you kind of look at the ecosystem, will feeds back into how corporate disclose their carbon emission, the Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3, and so on. And through that, Bursa is running a PLC transformation program that we jointly launched with the Ministry of Finance. And one of the key pillars, well, in fact, two of the key pillars of that 5-year program is ESG and digital. In a way, how do we use data, digital, to empower the PLCs in Malaysia to enforce the disclosure and to encourage and support the whole transition journey. So the long answer to your question is that if you are 1%, you probably get cut off from this ecosystem.
Yeah. So, yeah, the 1% will be cut off. Thank you for giving a very good overview of the ecosystem, no, and all the different building blocks that are put in place, from the reporting requirement, from looking at the connection to global standards and the trade agendas, as well the carbon market that will have a huge impact as well on all the different companies. So you surely want to be looked at by the 99% of the investors and the ecosystem moving forward, no? So now let's move. I think the importance of I think it's not questioned anymore. Based on all your intervention, we cannot question anymore if we should embark or not, and why is this so important from both the development and financial perspective and business. It makes business sense, basically. Now let's look into the how. How are we making sure that we can collect the relevant data, and what are some of the successes and some of the challenges. So now I would like to invite our fourth speaker from Unilever. No? Being one of the world-leading FMCG companies, Unilever has a wide range of ESG data to track in terms of product, processes, raw materials. If you can share how Unilever managed to the collection and processing of such voluminous data, ESG data. Over to you.
Okay. Yep. Thanks, Manon. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Very happy to be here. To help answering the question, I will show a couple of slides, just short one. So this is just to show our existence in Indonesia. So this year we celebrate our 99 years in Indonesia, and till now, to date, we have 43 brands, and with more than 10,000 SKUs and delivering products through our 500 distributors in the country. And this is just to share our commitment on sustainability. So this is our purpose is purpose like future fit. And this strategy also can be seen as the ESG strategy. So it's spanning from the health of planet including here is net zero emission, how our commitment on sustainable packaging, and in the middle part is about the health, confidence, well-being, how our commitment on the deliver more positive nutrition to the consumers, and the right one is how our commitment to build a more socially inclusive world. And based on the previous commitment in Indonesia, we translated this to 46 commitment. And this is not an easy job for us to track, consolidate, incorporate all this latest data from, I think, more than 50 data points. So we collect various data regarding all this commitment previously shared. And what we need to have first is that we should agree on the basis of preparation. I think it's similar to what the other speakers explained earlier. This basis of preparations set and agreed at global level, Unilever global, and this is include what the indicator use, what the baseline that used to measure the achievement of specific commitment, and also the time bound. And then this is might be different from one commitment to other commitment. And other thing is the ways of working. It's kind of governance, how the data prepares, how each division should provide the data, the reliable, the accountable, and the most updated data. And then we also set the frequency and cycle, so everyone knows what is the deadline and the reporting cycle. And then there's all more than 50 data points. We put all this together in one data monitoring system. So with this data monitoring system, it will help the internal stakeholder to see what is the latest to view, and also have a granularity of a specific data point that they want to see. For example, we are in the Unilever now divided into several business units. So like for GHG emission for scope 1 and scope 2, for example, the leadership can also or possible to see only to see what the specific data that might be useful for them. And then with this information that we put in one repository data, it will help us to build and publish the external reporting. Like as we know, we annually have annual report and also sustainability report, and it also it will help us to be more responsive to respond the query from the other stakeholders, like the SDG office or the stock exchange market. They several times send us a query to have the assessment on what the ESG related data. So with this incorporate data, it will help us to have an agility and faster to provide the data required, and also no need to check the validity to the data owners or the data preparers. I think that some of sharing.
Yeah, thank you, Lucius. No, I think good to see how basically your data collection system starts from the 46 commitment that the company is committed to do. I just have a quick follow-up questions. How do you ensure the quality of data that you are collecting? Hello, Lucius, are you still there?
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, it's muted.
Okay.
So yeah, we need to start with the primary source. For example, in manufacturing sites, we have EPR, the environment performance indicator, and we ask the manufacturing managers to really recheck the data, for example, the emission or the weather usage. So they do some validation to check the validity. And it's also happen when we do a community or on-ground project like waste collection, which I will share later, that we need to ask the proof of evidence, how the data collected and how's the indicator that or the methodology that they use to share or collect the data.
Okay, thank you very much. I see that some questions start to come in the Slido, so I invite you to use the Slido to ask some of the questions. I will ask one more before because it brings us and then to Bursa as well. I think there will be one of the key areas is how do we bring the whole supply chain and support the MSMEs now in being on board as well, which don't necessarily have the backbone and the financial means to invest in that transition. No? So I'll start with with Amarjit. If you can share the experience of MRCB group, since you have a very large supply chain, no? And what system have you put in place? And I know there are some challenges, and what are your ideas to overcome some of these challenges?
Yeah, I think generally we have no real issues with our own internal data. We've been collecting data sets on things like climate, scope 1, scope 2, etc. for 2 years now. This is our 3rd year. The issue is our supply chain. We're now trying to expand our scope 3 reporting and disclosure, and we're now engaging with our suppliers very actively. We've decided to take the approach to go to our biggest suppliers and our biggest projects, because in all likelihood they're going to be, many of them will be listed companies. So in respect of getting meaningful, accurate data, the likelihood is that they will be, the quality of that data will be pretty good. But we're finding even in that cohort, the quality of data is very uneven. The readiness levels are very uneven, and that's the challenge. We have no visibility on things like whether the correct boundaries have been set, whether they're complying with greenhouse gas protocols, and that's the issue. And we're trying to help our supply chain wherever we can. The pressure for gathering data is not going to subside. So it's important that we reach out, identify issues, and try and collaborate and engage and help them as much as possible. What we are doing, what we have done, is embedded in our standard contracts the requirement of all of our suppliers to give us data. We haven't started enforcing that yet in terms of what happens if they don't, which allows us to terminate them. Yeah. But at some stage in the future, we're going to have to do that. So it's obviously not something we want to do, but it's something that we may have no choice because of pressure from banks and investors and others, and clients actually, for that matter. So it's really down to reaching out, helping our smaller suppliers in particular understand the importance of gathering the data, pointing them in the right direction. UNGC and SME Corp have some very good tools and programs designed to help smaller suppliers become ESG ready. And we're pointing them in that direction and trying to help them as much as possible. But integrity of data is the main issue. I mean, we had received some data not long ago from one supplier, not a small company, quite a big company, that was identical for 3 months running. Now clearly, that data was wrong. So whilst we can analyze the data and look for patterns and do some rudimentary checks, until data is assured and externally audited, I think this is going to remain a challenge, And I think we're the only ones, that have that problem. I'm sure most of the major corporates in Malaysia are trying to grapple with that. The other thing we're doing is we're using the Access platform that UNGC has developed to pre-qualify our supply chain. We have thousands of suppliers. Most construction businesses will have a similar number, and we are using that platform to do a preliminary analysis and assessment of where they are in terms of their ESG and sustainability readiness. And again, we can use that data to help them and ensure that they can promote ESG within their businesses and become a long-term supplier for us.
Okay, thank you very much. There's quite a number of questions that are coming in. That's good in the chat box. Let me ask with one for Bursa, building up on the. What is the standard endorsed by Bursa to certify sustainability reporting and disclose, and how is this verified? And I think there was a subsequent question as well. And how do we make sure that we're collecting actually the right data? Is this really the right data, or we're just collecting data for a reporting purpose?
Yeah. Thanks, Manon. So I'm looking at the questions. There are quite a number of them coming to me.
Yes.
There are a series of questions, but most of them are actually, this topic is really integrated. And the ecosystem we foresee, hopefully, is one that is open, inclusive, and trusted, right? In the sense that when we talk about mandatory disclosure, I think that's one question to talk about is disclosure mandatory. It is, starting 2024, financial report. So what that means is that in terms of what are the standard we endorse by Bursa to certify the sustainable reporting is, I think there are three sources. The first one, I think we have published our sustainability reporting guideline, and is available publicly on our website called Bursa Sustain. Second is that the data points that we mandate PLC to disclose starting 2024, which consists of a series of close to about 25 data points as a start, and these are data points that are commonly adopted across sectors. Now, if you look at the lens of, for example, MRCB, in the sector that they operate in, there will be additional and more targeted data points or disclosure points that's more related to that data. And third piece is that through our index provider, and that's one of the connectivity that we have with the international index provider, which is called FTSE Russell, which is owned by the London Stock Exchange. We have a FTSE for Good Day index starting 2014, and since then, so 8 years has passed. We have a repository of about 300 plus companies, whereby each of them have ESG rating and each of them have data points to support. And all these data standards are aligned to the globally recognized data standards. So I guess these are the three components in terms of what are we looking at in terms of data standards that we endorse or is available to the public. In relation to the question about what's the collaboration with SSM, so it is SSM is our company registrar. It is a MOU we announced, I think last week or the week before, so it's fairly recent. Out of the MOU, there were three components. One key component is really to explore looking at how do we jointly invest and enable private companies in terms of ESG disclosure. So that entails probably a few things. One is to understand what are the disclosure that our PLCs, which typically would be their customers, disclose, and then we'll work out the standards and what are the common denominator, and then we can start to make an impact from that. But having said that, I hope to say we are exiting the COVID. We are getting back to normal, but in the SME space, we are cognizant that the SME is just coming back into the new normal. Their company is still struggling. There are a lot of people is really, looking at survival rather than sustainability at this point of time. So our view, when we look at private company, they are part of the ecosystem of the public listed company, but the attitude we should take towards them is more of a support. How do we help them? And we can't look at the SSM collaboration in isolation, because I think it needs collective effort from the corporates such as MRCB. We need the banks to come and provide supply chain financing or related solution to this SME as well. And we need educational and enablement initiative to really work with the SMEs and the private companies to make them understand why we do this and what are the long-term benefits you get. So maybe the last point about the SME is that, and the attitude towards data in the ESG spheres is that as the ESG, as this industry is taking off, if you kind of look at the Gartner hype cycle, right, you tend to go through a hype and there's a big drop in expectation, there's a crash, and then suddenly, and then gradually it kind of normalizes and grows progressively. I think we're at the cusp of that uptake of cycle, whereby now if you look at accounting standards, for example, ISSB, you talk about TCFD and related data standards are now being consolidated and formed. It means that people are talking to each other and people have now is at the cusp of being able to talk the same language. So that kind of gives a sign that the uptake is coming and the industry is getting into the next phase of starting to get a bit more mature. So I think from that angle, what my personal view is that you should look at your ESG credentials or your score, just like you look at your creditworthiness score. As in, if you start, when you're young, you might get advice such as, get a credit card, even though you don't spend more, but make sure your credit is good because somewhere down the line, a bank is going to evaluate that based on your taking a house loan or mortgage or car loan and so on. So similar to that attitude, what I would urge companies to look at is that, well, start it early, grow it, nurture it, and then that the impact could be pretty long term.
Thank you. Good to, I think there is slowly emerging common language, I think, in the space, as you said, but still a lot of challenge to get to common standards. I think that's one of the biggest issues. It's really still left to everyone to do its own reporting, and hopefully impact standards can be agreed upon national, regional, global level as well. That would really help, because going back to the point of the quality and are we collecting the right data, because we can do all this if we're not moving towards a real transformation for sustainability. We're in the same space in a few years' time. No, I'm looking. I just saw the sign already a few minutes ago that we have only 10 minutes back, but there's quite a lot of questions on the chat. Again, going back to quality of data, and if this is really helping to take informed decisions. So I'd like to invite our speaker on the online. Maybe we can hear from Unilever. No, if you can give us example of how really the data you've shown, the system you've put in place, no, quite impressive. But is this really informing better decision making on the social and environmental impact that Unilever has, no? And what would be your learning from that experience?
Yeah, I put up one slide again just to visualize. So I think we all here agree that we demand rich, valid, and near real-time data. And what I show here is part of our plastic commitment. We are committed to collect more than plastic that we sell. So this is we have been building this this commitment more than 20 years, and we know that collecting information from the primary sources from the community-based program is really hard. It's really challenging to collect the valid and almost real time. And then just recently we tried to build partnership with a couple of startups. As we know that technology is one of our savior to help us collecting more better quality of data. The first example is our work with the USAID and the subnational government in two locations in eastern Indonesia, in Makassar and Maluku. In this initiative, we tried to have kind of traceability from the waste pickers to this recycle industry on the weight and type of waste collection. And then on the right part is our collaboration with Duitin, a technology startup company that try to connect the household and to the waste bank. The learning from this project is that we can have such a almost near real time, and also we can help the society to have upscale data on digital literacy. But we, on the other hand, we should admit that we're still in the learning curve, because we see the challenge is quite tough here, because we work with this, the society in the rural or in the 30 cities, and we also face infrastructure gap. But then the use of technology is inevitable for us. We really need to adopt this technology to collect the data more precisely and gather more valid data. And for us, it's useful to see this accountability and also the really impactful program from project that we run. You can see here the by whom, or the type of plastic, or the location where the plastic is collected. And we hope that we can also share this, data or the result to subnational government or ministry to also see what for example, the traceability look like, and what this initiative can be scaled up later. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think this came out in some of the example, and how the importance of technology, in helping in collecting the data. Those are good examples. I'd like to invite Mr. Poom as well to share the experience as our last on. If you can really elaborate on the quality of data and how it helps inform better decision making, business decision, but from a sustainability aspect as well.
Sure. I think I'll talk on something slightly different, on the not the standard of the ESG data, where you collect and review, assess the performance, and then disclose, but on the availability of data coming through digital transformation. I can talk about the agriculture sector, of which is a core part of CP Group. The availability of data that helps manage farm, from the crops cultivation to animal feed production to animal farm and aquaculture, livestock. So example would be, since we have better data on animal health with IoT sensor and analytical capability, you need fewer people to go in the farming area and interact with the animals, thereby reducing the risk of transmission of disease from human to animals and vice versa. And with better data, you can manage the atmosphere, the environmental components of animal farming better, for better animal welfare, for better animal health. And that in turn leads to better outcome, right? For you get better product, you get lower losses, you use less energy, less water, less of natural resources, and generating less impacts. And that itself also feeds in the data, showing that you actually improve. So having good quality of data, having more precise data, begets better data and begets better performance. So that's just one example from the agricultural sector. But on the overall, of course, having data to help us guide towards the meeting the goals. I mentioned that in 2015 we come up with the group-wide goals. Right now we're at the second phase, 2021 to 2030. We're at the second phase of the group-wide goal and sustainability strategy. So without clear and reliable data, we cannot measure our progress along those goals. We have about 15 main goals, such as the climate, human rights, etc., water, circular economy. So again, having clear data from the different business units, not just the big public companies, but also all the little subsidiaries, help us ensure that we'll, as a group, we're moving in the right direction and not leaving the little companies behind. And the other challenge that the other speakers have already touched on is going to the suppliers, going to scope 3 emissions. I think the key is focusing on what matters most and what's low hanging fruit, and then scale up. I think that's all for me for now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just see that our time, just as you, and the time is up. Can I give 30 seconds for each? Yeah, okay, thank you. We have 2 minutes because we need to wrap up already. I think this is just the beginning. I feel we just started the surface. We could do surely easily another hour, no? As it's really good to see the leadership of the different players, both on the regulator side, the business side, really taking the lead to take on the challenge. It's not easy, easier said than done. But how do we move towards stronger standards, quality data, as well as support the supply chain? I think are some 3 key areas that moving forward were raised by some of the speakers as some of the challenges. But before we close the panel, I would like to ask all of them 30 seconds. What's your key takeaway, your key advice to the audience today? So I'll start with you.
Okay, I think if you're a big company, if you're a listed company, reach out to your supply chain, help them out. The big companies are fine, I think they've got this sorted. It's the smaller companies, it's your supply chain. You're going to need your supply chain support, sooner or later. The quicker you get them on side and build capacity with them and train them and make them understand the importance of this. This isn't going away. It's going to have profound impacts on their businesses moving forward, even their survival potentially. So I don't think companies have grasped that. I think they need to understand that and then guide them. Share with them what your material matters are. Different businesses, different industries are going to have differentiated areas of data that are important to them, and guide them, help them, point them in the right direction, and get them to start. That's all, and we have a habit, unfortunately, of complicating very simple things with acronyms and your TCFDs and science-based targets, and stop using this jargon. Just simplify it, because actually it's really simple, and I think we scare companies off, and to the extent that they don't make that start.
Yeah, good point. Start simple, but with the vision in mind, and make it simple. Okay, maybe we go online with Lucio. Do you want to come in? Lucio?
Yeah, I think talk in the context of private company, I see that talk to our colleagues about sustainability is not easy thing, because in many cases they see what they do every day just for the business purpose. They don't see any connection to sustainability or ESG related. So we need to have a common language and to have a common commitment that they do is part of the company initiative. And then the important thing regarding today is how to provide such valid, rich and real-time data, and we can have decent reporting and for internal and external purposes.
Yeah, very good point. Now, how do we make sure that sustainability is not a department on the side, but everyone, no matter where you sit in your organization, you understand the importance, the values, the purpose, and you can contribute to the agenda. Thank you, Poom. No, I always confuse the 2 names, sorry. It seems I cannot get the 2 names right. But over to you, Poom, now. Yeah, Lucio, thank you.
I'll echo Amarjit's comment, but on the other side, so if you're an SME, be proactive, right? And approach the bigger guys in the value chain, right? If you supply them something or if you buy something from them. If you're in the similar or the same value chain, the material issues might be similar, right? So you can go look up and go be proactive and talk to them. What kind of data do you want, and how can they help you develop this, data collection? Because all these bigger companies, they mostly have corporate sustainability goals that they have to develop their value chain as supplier as well. in the sustainable supply chain management is all in the KPIs of all the big companies. So yeah, that's just my shortcut. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Also, I think we need to illustrate some good example of MSMEs which are taking on the challenge and what kind of support they're getting from the main companies, to help them with that transition. So last but not least, Sisi, over to you for the last words. No? Yeah.
I'm running out of things to say. Yeah, so maybe very quickly, I think, going back to the role of data in terms of helping the economy to transit, it's an enabler, is to facilitate this transition. I think probably always know why. I mean, data can be overwhelming. There's all sorts of different data for different needs, for different industry, different roles within the industry. So always know why, and then we can figure out the how. And the how is an ecosystem, is partnership, is collaborative, is inclusive. So figure out the how, the why, and then let's work out the how.
Very good. Thank you very much for this last word. Just to close on UNDP side, we have developed some standards as well to align businesses to the Sustainable Development Goals. So if you are interested, there's the UNDP Financial Hub, which has a whole series of standards. There are different ones. But those ones are SDG impact standards, so how you can align your business to the Sustainable Development Goals and how it helps you how to define your own indicators and targets for your own business model. No? So on this note, a huge thank you to our speakers. I think it was a very rich conversation. I hope that you got inspired, got some ideas, and are as motivated to continue the journey on continue improving the collection, the quality, and the usage of ESG data to drive the sustainability agenda in ASEAN. No? So thank you very much to the speakers, and I guess I will hand it over to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. A round of applause for Ms. Manon and Bernier, moderator for the second panel session.